LeaderCast.
This week on the Deep Leadership Podcast.
Hands down, the single biggest component of success was that the CEO was really, really good at getting stuff done. We made more money in recycling rubber than we have in software.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. Spring is here, and it's another beautiful day here in North Carolina. And this episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Leader Connect, Ignite Management Services, and Liberty Strength. These sponsors help me bring these shows to you each and every week, so I encourage you to click on their links below and check them out. Now, in this episode, I sit down with David Dodson, an award-winning faculty member at Stanford University's Graduate School of Business and author of The Manager's Handbook. We discuss the essential skills of effective leadership, the importance of time management, the role of managers as teachers, and how to create a productive workplace culture. All the things they failed to teach you in MBA school. Now, this was a fun conversation that I know you'll love. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by David Dodson. David is an award-winning faculty member of Stanford University's Graduate School of Business, where he guides students in tactical execution. His success in the classroom follows years of experience as a practitioner. He started at McKinsey Company as a consultant and then became a serial entrepreneur, operating 6 companies as CEO or executive chairman. He has served as board member of more than 40 public and private companies and has been an active investor in over 150 businesses. He is the author of a new book called The Manager's Handbook, 5 Simple Steps to Build a Team, Stay Focused, Make Better Decisions, and Crush Your Competition. In this book, David shows readers how to master the essential skills necessary to run an effective organization. And I am excited to have him on the show to learn more about becoming a more effective manager. So, David, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, John.
It's nice to meet you, and I'm honored to have you on the show. But I wanted to just start off the discussion. What compelled you to write this book as a handbook for managers? Who was this book written for?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I didn't set out to write a book. I think a lot of people, especially who have had a long business career or an academic career, say, I want to write a book. For me, it was the opposite. I just became obsessed with this notion of why some people are so much better at getting things done than others. So I spent about 3 years studying this. And I worked past all the attribute theories about that entrepreneurs are supposed to look a certain way or come from a certain background. And I identified these 5 skills that all of them had. It didn't matter whether it was Dwight Eisenhower or Oprah Winfrey or Bill Gates, they all shared these same 5 skill areas. So then I had a question, which is, what am I going to do with it? And my wife, Wendy, said, well, why don't you write a book? I said, I don't want to write a book. Yeah. And not because I didn't write a book, but I didn't think it would make a difference. And she said, well, why don't you write a book that's like a handbook where people can take these skill areas and they can use it the next morning? She's an entrepreneur herself. She said, that's what I would want. And I started thinking, well, that's exactly what I would have wanted when I got started in business. So I took the 5 skill areas, John, I broke it down into the sub skills, and I made it into a how-to book. And in fact, the one debate that we had with the publisher, really the only debate we had with the publisher, was they weren't totally thrilled with the word handbook. And I kept saying, they wanted to use a little sort of loftier terms. I said, no. This is for people who are managers, so they can help them do their job in the morning. And that is what a handbook is all about. And it's turned out that, hit the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, which I never thought was ever going to happen. And it's because there was this huge thirst for a handbook.
Yeah, it's interesting that because with 15,000 books written in the leadership space, you would think everything is covered, But what was missing, and what I like about the book is is a basic guide to how to be an effective manager based on research, based on, the people that have been successful before you, and a simple, like you said, a handbook, a guide. This is what you read on day one. I love that idea about the book. One of the things you say is that that an MBA doesn't necessarily teach you about being an effective manager. And I got my MBA a long time ago, and I remember what I learned in school and when I first became a manager there were two completely different things. So why do we miss out on some of these essential skills in the MBA program?
I'll be teaching a class, or I used to teach a class, and we'd say, and it's really important that you build a team and have great people working for you. And all my students would nod. They walk out the door and they go, I don't know how I'm supposed to do that, but I know I'm supposed to do it. And so it went with all of these. That was one of the 5 skills, all these different skills. And it's a huge missing component within the MBA program. So what I said is, you know what? This is the way you teach how to be a good leader, how to be a good teacher, how to be a good manager. Because I believe to be a good manager is also being a good teacher. That's why that's the context I use the word teacher. And so I said, okay, well, what are the components of building a team? Well, you have to learn how to hire. You have to learn how to get good coaching and good feedback. You have to know how to onboard. You need to do exit interviews. There were 7 simple steps. And so I just broke it into those 7 simple steps in how to lead. So it's not like a leadership book, rah, go out there and go get them, gang, but you're on your own on how to do it. This is the opposite. This is, I know you don't need any more persuasion that you need to build a team. I'm just going to tell you how to do it. So you've got this how-to manual. And I think increasingly, at least in our MBA program at Stanford, we are shifting more and more towards being practical and recognizing that we're sending people out of the world, and they do need these basic skills. I have an investment company. We've got about probably about 80 companies in our portfolio. And I look back over the last 18 years on performance, and the single biggest determinant on how well companies in our portfolio did, it's not the market, not technology, software, none of that. Hands down, the single biggest component of success was that the CEO was really, really good at getting stuff done. And we made more money in recycling rubber than we have in software.
Yeah. I mean, that's the essentials. This is what management's all about, is being able to, like they said, organize people to get things done. And I think that you're right. We go to MBA school, we study accounting, we study operations, we study legal, we study ethics, we study all these things, but it's like you get to your first job, you're like, I got to hire 10 people. Like no one's ever told me. It taught me what I can and can't ask in a interview, and how to hire the right people. I think we miss out on that. It's almost like the joke you hear sometimes where, people talk about high school. Like I learned the quadratic equation, but I never learned how to do my taxes, right? So we're missing out on like some of the basic fundamentals when we in a program. Yeah.
In my class, we role play those conversations. I mean, we had a student comes out and you actually role play it. We practice it because of exactly the kinds of things that you're talking about. So I come from as you said in the intro, John, I teach now at the Stanford Business School, but before that, I was a 5-time entrepreneur. And so I have spent my time, on the field, and I know what it's like to be in a situation where you just don't really know what the right answer is. And so, so I'll take 10 years, and at the end of 10 years, I'll find the answer because I'll make a whole bunch of mistakes along the way. Or someone could just tell me on the front end the right and wrong way to do it, and I'd be happy to start on third base. So we're trying to through the manager's handbook, trying to put people on third base. There's some stuff that isn't in the book, obviously, some things that you're going to have to learn on your own. But I want people to read this book and start off on third base.
I love that. So, you mentioned it. There's these 5 essential skills of effective management. Give us a flavor for what they are, and then the question I would have: can anyone master them? Or is it you have to be born with these skills?
Yeah. So broke down a commitment to building a team, fanatical custodian of time, so time management, a willingness to seek and take advice, ability to set and adhere to priorities, an obsession with quality. Now, those might feel a little bit like kind of platitudes, But every one of those, I break it down into these sub skills. So I'm going to pick one that may not be obvious. Willingness to seek and take advice. So we go, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to seek and take advice. Well, not so fast. Okay. So when you call up someone for advice, do you structure that phone call in a way that you get an hour's worth of information in 20 minutes? Or do you structure it in a way that you get 2 minutes of information in an hour? And so there's a specific way that you ask and you deliver your question in a way that you can maximize the value from that person. If you want to get an executive coach, how do you pick an executive coach? Where do you go get them? What are the questions you ask? What do you expect from an executive coach? And so it goes. So each one of those chapters says, look, I know you don't need me to convince you that you need to go take advice. I mean, that's like, that's almost cheating when you could just follow somebody to get the answer. But how do you do it in the way that like the master do it? How do you do it the way Bill Gates used to get advice from Warren Buffett? I mean, these are the people that I went out to research and find out how they do it.
I love that. So in a way, this is practical advice that anyone can employ, right? So this is not like leadership skills you're born with. This is like, no, if you want to, like your story, if you want to seek advice from people, right? Then here's the way to do it. Here's the way to maximize the time. Here's the humility that's required to get that done. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, John, you had asked me, you said, can anybody do it? So I was watching my niece play the piano. She's an extraordinary piano player. And how do you do that? And then I thought, okay, well, you need to learn how the difference between a sharp and a flat, how the pedals work, how you hold your hands over 88 keys, et cetera, et cetera. You combine all those and you make music. Or if you want to learn how to play a sport, let's say I'm not a golfer, but I have golfed enough to know that I'm not a golfer. But to learn how to golf, you know the difference between a putter and a driver. You need to know how to put the ball on a tee. You need to know where to have your feet. So any one of those, what I'm calling sub skills, is within anybody's capability. You learn the sub skills, you combine them, and you master the primary skill. So going back to the first one, which is ability to build a team, I take hiring and I say, how can I describe how to be really good at hiring in the fewest words possible? Because my reader, they don't have time to read an 800-page book. They're busy. They're running an organization. So I take how to hire and I put it into 20 pages, not 250 pages.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. I mean, one of the things I found, and we've had Ken Blanchard on the show, for example, and one of the things I like about him is all his books are short and easy to read. And what he says is, I want you to read the book, but more importantly, I want you to implement the ideas in it. So I don't want to make it a 600-page, difficult thing to read. I want it to be something that you go, I need to do that, and actually go and apply those ideas. So I like the idea of short, to the point, get some, this is what you need to do to get it done. I like that a lot. Yeah, that makes sense.
Ken's material is terrific.
What's that? Sorry?
I said Ken's material is terrific. You're lucky to have him on your show.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting, too, because in person, he's exactly like he is, that you would imagine he is. I mean, he is just a natural good, he's great at people and dealing with people. So he's phenomenal guy for sure. Well, let's get into hiring a little bit. You say that most managers are kind of bad at it. So and I made mistakes that I mentioned of myself. I was reflecting on that in a recent paper I did. And it seemed like I was really good at it early in my career, and I sort of got worse at it, as I probably used my gut more than I used, really getting into, digging in deep into the people. So what do managers do wrong, and what should they be doing differently?
Well, you said the key word, which is gut. When in the hiring process, gut feel tends to be a shortcut for just being kind of lazy. Just let's call it like it is. And Malcolm Gladwell, who's written some terrific books, and one of them is Talking with Strangers. And he tells this fascinating story about this world leader, Neville Chamberlain, who was Prime Minister of Britain, and Hitler was Chancellor of Germany. So Neville Chamberlain got on a plane, met with Hitler, and came back and announced to the world that we had nothing to worry about. And his reasoning was the way it had to do with Hitler's demeanor, specifically the way he shook his hand, that he shook his hand with two-handed handshake that he said he reserved for only his special friends. And he said that this is a man I can trust. So Malcolm Gladwell and many, many others got Adolf Hitler wrong, and he, of course, turned into a monster. The one guy who didn't get him wrong was Winston Churchill. Why is that? Winston Churchill never met Hitler. Winston Churchill based his assessment on Hitler on data. He looked at what Hitler was doing. He wasn't influenced by his demeanor, how he shook his hand, and so forth. That's really the principal sort of lesson behind hiring, is that you have to hire based on data. And as a result, you'll end up not hiring people who are really good at interviewing or really good at shaking your hand. And instead, you'll hire people who are really, really good at getting things done. And there are very simple ways to do it, which I lay out in the book. And I want to give you an example of how simple I try to make this. First of all, you should hire, if you can, hire in a team. You should have 2 or 3 people interviewing at the same time. Why? Because you're all looking at the same data. Otherwise, if you have 3 different interviews with 3 different people, you're all talking about different data. So you have a common data set. Second, I'm going to give you 2 examples. The second is that when you discuss the candidate, you discuss them in reverse order of seniority. Because if the top guy talks first, then he or she is going to influence the views of the other 2 people. Can't help it. It's just human nature. So I go through these very, very simple, easy to implement things the next day that will improve your chances of hiring the right people. And of course, we all have that experience where we hired a dud and how incredibly expensive that is to the organization. And when you get a superstar, you just can't pay them enough. But the world is filled with superstars. You just have to be able to know how to find them and identify them.
I love that. I mean, we talk about a lot about that on the show, just in terms of how much, rank has influence on what people say. The idea of going with the sort of lowest ranking person in the room first to hear their opinion, because once the boss says, I liked him, everyone's like, yeah, he was good. Everyone is sort of, they chime in and they just echo what the leader says. So I love the idea of getting that feedback from the lower individual. And it's interesting too, and I wonder, and I was reflecting on, I was just saying this earlier, is that the maybe the more years of experience you have as a leader, I don't know, maybe it hurts you, or you think that you can trust your gut more. I think I don't know, maybe it's because you've had so many people that maybe that weren't that great in the beginning, but you turn them around, and so you have maybe more optimistic thoughts, or maybe you remember only the positive memories of your hiring people. And I think it might negatively affect your ability to sort of dig into the details. Because I think when I was younger, I spent a lot more time digging into the details. And as an older manager, I tend to not do that, Right. So I don't know if experience has an impact on that as well.
I mean, it can. I've observed that there's really 2 types of experienced leaders, if you will. Those that say, well, at this point, I trust my gut, but they have a very, very low bar. Their tolerance for making hiring mistakes is quite high. They basically, I'm going to hire 10 people and 7 are going to work out, and 3 of them are going to fire, and I'm going to hire, 5 to replace those 3. And then there's a different kind of manager who says, wait a minute, this can be better. I mean, a 30% failure rate is not okay, especially because the costs are good. How do the very, very best people hire? And that's what I'm going to do. And then, by the way, and this is a critical part of the manager's handbook, is that it's okay for you to be really good at hiring or after time at hiring, but it's quite another thing when you build an organization that's good at hiring. And when you go and interview at a place like Apple Computer, for example, Steve Jobs is extraordinary at spotting talent. We like to talk about, these super leaders like they have a red cape and they can have X-ray vision. But Steve Jobs was very specific and methodical about how he spotted talent. And he demanded the same from his managers, who demanded the same from their managers. As a result, Apple builds up an extraordinary organization. Jeff Bezos, he's legendary in how he runs his meetings. And I described, basically a how-to format on how to run an effective meeting. But he knew, who cares if I'm good at running meetings? I need an organization. I need Amazon to run great meetings. That's where it's transformative. That's why increasingly, we use the word leader a lot, and I use the word manager a lot, but I'm almost kind of more, John, using the word teacher, because I'm trying to instill in my students and the CEOs I work with, you got to think of yourself as a teacher. you're not an individual performer if you want to really build a substantial organization.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
As a leader, you're responsible for the mission and the people assigned to you. Regardless of the size of your team, employees are depending on you for their lives and careers. For the sake of your team and the people who entrust you with this role, you need to master the skills to become a great leader. Best-selling leadership author John Rennie is proud to introduce the Qualified Leadership Book Series. This new series teaches you how to become a people-centered leader. Great leaders know that employees who are respected, appreciated, and allowed to grow will go the extra mile. These books provide real-world leadership wisdom written from a hands-on perspective. If you want to be a more effective leader, this is the one book series you should read this year. This 3-book series contains the following best-selling leadership books: I Have the Watch, You Have the Watch, and All in the Same Boat for one low price of $39.99. Begin your journey to become a leader worth following. Go to johnsrennie.com and get your order in today.
This episode is brought to you by Leader Connect, a leadership training company and video platform founded by the leadership book author and Deep Leadership Podcast guest, Neil Jerd. Leader Connect is a video and podcast streaming platform for leaders and teams. Watch it alone or as a team, and each video supports you and your team, allowing you to improve performance and build a great culture. Join hundreds of experts and learn about leadership, planning, public speaking, team building, mindfulness, and a range of other subjects that will help you lead well and build a great team. I'm proud to say that I'm one of the experts on this platform. Leader Connect is offering a 10% discount to all Deep Leadership listeners. Go to leader-connect.co.uk and enter the code DEEP at checkout. Master your leadership with Leader Connect. This episode is brought to you by Ignite Management Services. Ignite is led by Mike Watson, who you might remember from episode 137. Mike and his team believe that everything starts with leadership, whether it's strategy execution or cultural transformation. It's the role of the leader to create the conditions for their people to succeed. The team at Ignite can help you develop critical habits to enhance your leadership capability and transform your business. Ignite Management is now offering the Resilient Leadership Assessment Tool. This is an online questionnaire designed to assess and guide leadership development, coaching, and team building. It provides leaders an opportunity to gain insights into their leadership strengths and development needs. After taking this assessment, you will receive a custom, detailed report that provides practical and actionable recommendations to enhance your effectiveness. I have taken this assessment myself and found it to be extremely valuable in helping me make changes to my leadership approach. Right now, Ignite is offering 15% off the price of this tool to the Deep Leadership audience. Go to ignitemanagement.ca and enter the code START15 at checkout to get started today. I love that. I love the idea that of a teacher. Because I've been I've got a lot of years of experience. And now as an entrepreneur, I have a lot of young employees working for me, and I do feel like the teacher. I feel like guys come in my office and they're like, I'm trying to figure this out, and it's like, it's actually fun. I enjoy mentoring. I love teaching. I love sharing. And I also like say, try it on your own. Like I like to tell people, I'm not going to give you the answer. Go see what you can figure out and come back. And I enjoy that part of leadership, or that part of managing, is like seeing, right now, one of my best employees, he's a college graduate with no experience in our industry. And he learned our products from the shop floor, and now he's doing all of our quotations with our customers, and he talks to customers every day, and he understands the technical side. He has no engineering degree, but understands the technical side of our products, and he can speak really intelligently around the technical parts of our products. And I'm like, do you realize how capable you are, that you were not, 2 years when you got here? And so I get excited when I see people develop capabilities that they didn't even know that they had at all. So I think I like the idea of managers as teachers, leaders as teachers.
Well, that kind of, John, that really, and if I describe it in the book, that breaks it down into skills, knowledge, and attributes, right? So you just described someone who had great attributes. Skills and knowledge you can usually teach. Attributes are really hard to teach. So an example would be, let's say, someone in the accounting area, really easy to relate to. Attributes would be all of the things that you just described about good work ethic, hungry to eat, to grow. A skill might be their ability to use accounting software. That'd be a skill. Knowledge might be tax laws in your state. And when you're interviewing, you've got to get the attribute right. And most experienced interviewers are willing to sacrifice some skill and knowledge to get the attributes. But then when you look at how they attract candidates, they say, well, we want someone who has an MBA. We want someone who has this many years of experience. And we want no. And I describe this as scoring. No, that's not what you want. You're looking for a certain outcome. You don't, if you want to make sales go up by 15%, you don't care whether they have MBA or not, if they can make sales go up. You want to find someone who can make sales go up.
I love that. I often say that some of my best employees over the years had no credentials. I mean, it's incredible if you can find those people that can move the ball forward. And one of my top employees of this company, he was a tool and die maker, but he was one of our best engineers. It just he came up through the ranks versus the college education or what have you. And I could not have run my company without his experience. So I always say that not to look for pure credentials when you're doing hiring. So I love that part of it. Switching gears a little bit, you mentioned time management being an issue. I love what you say here. You say that managers must be fanatical custodians of their time. And one of the more important things you could say as a manager is no. So explain what you mean about the importance of time management as a manager.
Yeah, I mean, it is so critical now. When I was working on the book and working on this part of it, COVID wasn't really up and, had sort of taken over our lives. And at that point, the number of communications that a typical manager got had increased already from 1,000 a year to 30,000 a year. Just remarkable. And of course, we know that's because it's email and texting and so forth. And that was all supposed to make us efficient, right? But we know that all it didn't increase collaboration, didn't make us more efficient. It just increased the ease at which people could waste each other's time, right? And now, since COVID, with the introduction of video and with our smart phones and so forth, it is so easy to grab people's time and say, hey, got a minute, I want to pick your brain. Let's talk about this. Let's add Joe and Bill and Margaret to the meeting. And it's a huge, huge time sink. So what I did is I looked at data that was done at Harvard, 27 high-performing CEOs, and they followed them around 7 days a week in 15-minute increments. And if you can imagine this, John, they ended up with 60,000 hours of data. And a good friend of mine, Michael Porter's Professor R, he had been instrumental in doing a study. So he was the one who introduced me to it. And what I found is that those 27 high-performing CEOs were really, really great at how they managed their time, but they did not go to a weekend seminar and completely re-engineer their life, of which we all know those things deteriorate over time and we go back to our old habits. With a handful, like half a dozen, very simple, straightforward things that captured, in most cases, about 2.5 hours worth of time back that we waste. So I took those, we'll call them hacks. I don't really like that term so much, but I took those hacks, looked at the universal ones, the ones that were really easy to implement, and put them in the book. I'll give you a simple example, John. I took all of my half-hour meetings and moved them to 20 minutes. I took all of my hour-long meetings and moved them at 40 minutes. Now, that may seem like no big deal. You go look at your calendar and go backwards and take all those meetings and save that amount of time. 20 minutes on the hour-long meetings, 10 minutes on the half-hour meetings, and you add it up. And if you're anything like me, that adds up to 80 minutes a day. Okay. Furthermore, if you have a 20-minute meeting, what is sort of amazing is that people start on time and end on time. There's just something about we're having a 20-minute meeting versus come on in for an hour, and then people float in 5 minutes late and they go 5 minutes over. So this sort of thing that you can do tomorrow morning are the things that I put in the book. Because again, I wanted to write a book that people would use, not a book that people would read, be inspired, be all psyched, and then in 2 weeks later they're going back to doing what they were doing before.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think one of the things that we struggle with as leaders, I think, is that we want to be present, we want to be available, we want an open door policy, right? But yet, if you do that too much, then you're no longer in control of your schedule, right? So you're at the whims of whoever walks through the door. So I think it's really important that managers think through their day. Like you said, time-saving tips. Let's have a stand-up meeting. Let's have a short meeting. Let's save 10 minutes off. I love that, off 30-minute meetings. And the other thing too is I think leaders need, like, I'm going to shut the door time, where they need to think and reflect. And I often tell my people, like, if I've got something going on, I'll actually say I'm going to probably at 11, I'm going to be working on some stuff. So I'll have the door shut. So I let them kind of know I got some stuff I'm going to be working on. So it's not that I'm being rude and I'm being disconnected, but I need a little think, I need a time to think. And we need space in our day to do thinking, because I think too many managers are, they're doing and they're not thinking enough.
That kind of notion of deep work versus shallow work and where you really add value is, foundational to that section of the book. And here's what we, looking back, John, something we were talking about earlier about sort of being a teacher. If you have an organization where that's a culture, it's not about, hey, I'm the boss, and so I need my deep work time, or I'm the boss, and I need my close the door time. All right, that has some cultural issues. But if you're saying to your manager, you have a lot to add, a lot of value, and I don't want you to have an open door, okay? I want you to give people who report to you plenty of time, but give them quality time and structured time. All right. I don't want you responding to email at 2:00 in the morning. Yeah. And so you're not saying this is the behavior of the boss, and all you guys, I want you to operate differently at my whim and, answer the phone whenever I call. I'm saying this is how I operate, which is, by the way, is how I want you to operate. Yes. And how I want your team to operate. And so then they know, okay, if I'm not going to come in and just say, hey, got a minute to my boss, because he's telling me I'm not supposed to do that with the people that report to me. And can you imagine a world where pick the leader that you admire the most? Okay, let's say whether they're alive or not. Say because we were talking about it. Take Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. Can you imagine just knocking on Bill Gates' door and saying, "Hey, Bill, got a minute?" Okay, of course not. Or going to Warren Buffett and say, "Hey, Warren, got a minute?" That's not how they operate. So if you want to build a substantial organization, you have to say, I'm going to operate like they do, and I'm going to ask my team to operate like they do. And that's how you build a substantial organization.
Oh, that makes sense.
And by the way, when you start respecting their time and asking them to respect your time, everybody's happier. They're calmer. They're getting more stuff done. It's just more fun.
Yeah, I like that you say that, because I think it's one of the most important things that we have to do is respect our employees' time. And I think we tend to think, generally when you're the boss, you think you can do anything. Oh, we're going to hold you over your shift. We're going to give training, or we're going to, I can show up whenever I want to a meeting or what have you. I think when we respect our employees' time, that sets the standard for what our expectations are for them treating their people and them treating you, is that we all respect each other's time. So I think that's something that comes out of it. You do talk about culture too in the book. How does, we're touching on a little bit, managers setting the tone, but how else can managers, help create a productive workplace culture?
Oh boy, I'm of a believer that culture and strategy and tactics, they all fit together. And some academics say, well, I'm a strategy guy, and another guy, I'm a culture guy, and Drucker said culture eats strategy for breakfast, and my friend Michael Porter, kind of the king of strategy, pushed it back on it.
Yeah.
I have a different belief. They all fit together hand in glove. So let me give you an example, John. Giving feedback is essential if you want to get the best from the people. And a common way that people mismanage is they basically observe and judge. This person's a problem, and if they don't get better, and I don't really want to give them feedback, mostly because that's about you. You don't want to give them feedback because it's uncomfortable, or maybe you won't be liked, and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So the book outlines a very specific way, a 6-part formula to giving good feedback. You can do it in 3 sentences, but you do the 6-part framework So that you get you touch all of the important points. Here's my expectation. Here's how we measure it. Here's what I've observed. Is there anything getting in the way of you achieving these? Here's how I'm going to support you. Are we in alignment? 6-part framework, right? Really easy to implement. But, and here's where the culture piece is. You can't implement that effectively if you don't have a culture of radical candor, which is a concept that Kim Scott sort of memorialized in her book by the same name, Radical Candor. And how you achieve radical candor is you don't stand up one day at the company lunch and say, hey, we're going to be radically candid today going forward. No, I lay out, if you want to have radical candor in your organization, here's how do you do it. And I lay it out. You describe it to your direct reports. Then I go through the 5 steps that I've observed and developed about how you implement Kim Scott's radical candor. When you're done with that, you've got this culture of radical candor, so you can speak openly and directly, which is how you show that you care to your employees because you want them to succeed. And then you've got this 6-part framework. You put those 2 things together, tactics and culture, and it's transformative.
Yeah. It's all tied together. And I like the fact that you tie them all together because that's how it works. And, it's strategy, it is culture, it is how we operate. And these things are essential. So I love that you help, again, you have practical advice. So you say radical candor, great concept. How do I do it? Well, the handbook tells you. So I love that part of it. How are businesses using your book with their teams right now?
That's interesting, John, because I have to confess that when I wrote the book, I made 2 errors. One was caught before the book was finally published, which is I had finished the book, and the last thing you do when you write a book is you write the introduction. Now, you might think that's the first thing, but that's really the last thing you do. So I'd written the book, and I was collaborating. I've mentioned his name before, Michael Porter, who's at Harvard Business School, and he had been a good thought partner with me, and I gave him the introduction. I said, Mike, I think take a look at it, and I really just wanted to say it's good. And he read it, he turned it upside down. I was in his house, and he was in the kitchen. And he said, you got it all wrong. I'm like, oh my God, okay, I have to rewrite the whole book. And he goes, no. He said, you've described this like you can pick and choose, that it's a menu. And that these different skill sets among these 5 skills that you can pick and choose. Sorry, I restated. He said, they fit together. He said, you can't set and adhere to priorities if you don't know how to hire well, if you can't run a good meeting. And so he went through it. He was like knitting all of these 5 skills together. And he said, what you've done, these are his words. He said, you've created a unifying theory of execution. So the first part of it, John, is that organizations have to say that you can't say, hey, here's some things to look at. And if any of this sort of, meets your fancy, do it. If not, it's okay. Yeah, okay, everyone will get about 15% better. All right. But if you say you got to do it all, then you're going to be multiples better, 10 times better. Right? That's the first thing. The second thing was after I wrote the book, and I was with a CEO of a very large real estate company. And he said to me, any organizations that do all of these 5 things, because I was talking about individual managers, and it's like, oh my God, okay, I completely wrote this thing centric around an individual. And of course, there are organizations, Walmart's a good example, which I talk about in the book, that do it organizationally. And that's when it becomes transformative. So the answer to your question, John, is first of all, don't pick and choose. Do the hard ones, the yucky ones, okay? It's basically like doing the push-ups. If you want to win the Super Bowl, you're going to have to do some push-ups, even though you might not want to do push-ups. And the second thing is think of it as implementing it across your organization. So last week I was with a company in Brazil, and I was speaking to 70 of their managers because the CEO said, look, this is great. I love all the stuff in here, but it doesn't matter whether I do it or not. I need the 70 people to do it. So I talked to those 70 people. So I've been doing increasingly more of my speaking, and as a CEO will read the book, they'll say, give me a bunch of copies of the book. I'm going to make my team read it. And then I need you to come and help us implement it across the organization. That's when it's transformative.
I love that. Take it to all the levels, not just the CEO. Absolutely. Yep. So what's next for the book?
Well, what's next for the book is that I didn't write the book, or I didn't intend to write a book. But when I did it, I said, I'm going to write a book at this age and stage in my life here. I want to write a book that's going to help transform organizations. So what's really happening with the book now is it's actually taking off in the academic market, right? Academic world. So it's taught at Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Yale, Columbia, as Dartmouth. So schools are using it at the MBA level, which is fantastic. And then the second is that CEOs are reading it and they're saying, okay, I want that for my organization. And then I'm working with them to try to help them transform their organization. And that's really fun for me. I was thrilled that the book became a Wall Street Journal bestseller and USA Today bestseller. But that felt good for about an hour. A couple of days. But then what I really wanted to look back at 5 years and say, I made a difference in people's organization. I made a difference in people's leadership styles.
I love that. And you can think throughout history, the management and the leadership books that have impacted the world, right? I could probably name like the top 20, right? That have that truly impacted the way we think about leadership and management. So it sounds like this book has the opportunity to have that same impact in terms of the fact that, it's being embraced by both the academic side and the practitioner side. And that's rare. Usually you have some that are all the academics love it. The practitioners have no idea what they're talking about, right? So the fact that both groups, and because you have both, you bring both to the table, your practical experience plus your academic side, I think that's what we need more of is we bringing these two worlds together to give you real, step by step, this is how you do it. And this is the theory behind it. This is the research behind it, but this is also what's been done effectively in other companies. I love that part of it. And again, my hope is that it does make a dent, and does change the directory of the way we lead in companies, because we need more and more of that kind of impact. So congratulations so far on all your success on this book. And I really hope that it does all the things that we hope it will do. So what final message would you like to leave with our listeners on this topic?
I wrote a book that's like paint by numbers. Each chapter is the fewest number of words, fewest number of pages in the format that is like A plus B equals C. Because I wrote the book that I wish that someone had handed me when I was 30 years old and I was first a CEO. So I'd like to leave your listeners with this. If you want something like that, go on Amazon and buy the Manager's Handbook. I'm not saying that to pitch the book. I'm saying that because I'd like to help people transform their organization. That's what I really care about.
Yeah, I love that. And the book is called The Manager's Handbook. And again, highly recommend. This is the kind of book you want to have on your shelf. This one you want to read through, and it's going to be one that you're going to pull off all the time. And you say, what did David say about hiring? And you go refresh it right before you're going to do a hiring session, right? What did he say about employee feedback? What did he say about running an effective meeting? Go check that out. So it's good to have on the shelf as a reference guide. I've got a bookshelves full of books that have really impacted my life, and I'm always going back to them and looking at. So make this book part of your collection, The Manager's Handbook. David, how can people find out more about you and this new book?
Yeah, so the book at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, or the two easiest places to get it. And then Dave Dodson at davedodson.com, website where there's some information. And I'm going to over the next few months, I'm going to try to build that out to actually as a supplement to the book to help people who want to implement the Manager's Handbook and give them some guidelines and videos and so forth on how to implement it. So, hiring videos so you can actually watch a good example and a bad example of how to hire and so forth. So, I think we're on the edge of a transformational wave where we recognize and honor the importance of execution. Strategy is important and all the fancy stuff that we teach in Silicon Valley, but doggone it. If you don't know how to implement, you're not going to win.
I love that. A simple strategy executed perfectly is better than a complex strategy that's not executed at all, right? So that idea of just execution, as being in operations most of my career, I like getting stuff done, and I like the idea of being effective at doing things well and being very clear on your mission, your strategy, but also getting it done. And so this book, The Manager's Handbook is going to help you get things done. David, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for writing this book, and thank you for your contributions in this field. That is really important. And again, listeners, I highly recommend you follow the links that we have here in the show notes. Pick up a copy of this book, read it, put it on your shelf. This is going to be a good resource for you to be more effective. So, David, thank you for coming on the show and sharing this book and sharing all your knowledge on the subject.
John, you're quite welcome.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Hey there, fabulous souls. I'm Stephanie Baklaan.
And I'm Eden Alpert.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, Unapologetically Fab.
Get ready to join us on an amazing and real journey as we dive into life after 40 and own it.
We're all about changing the narrative, leaning into who you are, and living a life by your own design.
Join us as we embrace life unapologetically and redefine success.
This is Unapologetically Fab,
An Electric Cast production.
See you there.
Electricast.
Hey, it's Tim from 50 Years of Music with 50-Year-Old White Guys, the comedy podcast you had no idea you needed. Join Ben, Jeff, and me as we continue our musical road trip back through the years and around the globe. See, just when you thought all white guys were like Joe Rogan, you come across three educators trying to remember when we were cool.
50 Years of Music with 50-Year-Old White Guys.
Electricast.